I still stand in my camp that Mike Vrabel would be my ideal choice. I don't think that's
You
who they're
said
gonna
Brian
pick.
Flores.
No. I said that's who I wanted. I think that more realistically it could be Brian Flores. But who I wanted was Mike Vrabel. That's who I've always wanted.
Right.
But then now in retrospect, I think that it's more likely Anthony Weaver. I don't know why.
What? Whoa.
Because
where did that come from?
Well, Ryan Poles was doing more of a deep dive on him. He wanted to know more about him, and I think he could.
What do you mean he was doing a deep dive?
Well, Diana Rossini said this, that he was particularly interested in him. She said this last week. That's who he was doing more investigating on. I just feel like
is Anthony Weaver the Ravens?
Dolphins defensive coordinator.
The Dolphins. Who's the Ravens?
Who has no buzz at all. That's help us, Jack.
Todd Monken.
That's
right?
it. Who's sort of local. Who's sort of local. And I do like him. I think he's got a little bit of that edginess to him.
But wait, Weaver was with Baltimore, right?
Was he? Yes, I think so. Because he's only been the Dolphins DC for 1 year.
Because John Harbaugh, that's who John Harbaugh said is a superstar.
Weaver was the assistant head coach and defensive line coach in 22 and 23, and then he got the defensive coordinator job with the Dolphins off of that.
You're right, Dionne. He's a really interesting because John Harbaugh said he is a superstar.
And I feel that us getting excited about Brian Flores or the fact that they're talking to Ben Johnson or Pete Carroll or all of those things is literally window dressing on who exactly they're going to pick, because that's their MO. Well, it's not going to be one of those guys that we're all abuzz about. I
didn't say Brian Flores because that's who I want. I said Brian Flores. They asked, who do you think they would hire? They will hire.
That's what I said about Brian Flores too. And then in retrospect, I think I should have said Anthony Weaver.
My choice truly would be Pete Carroll or Mike McCarthy.
Well,
because
experience.
They
don't hire experienced head coaches except John Fox, who they were uncomfortable with.
Absolutely.
That's why I don't think they'll do that stuff.
I don't think that the age of Pete Carroll means diddly at this point.
No, I don't either.
Because you have another voice in the building that knows how to do it, who has done it before, and there's a bit of a condensation. Is that right? No.
Condensation
moisture,
right?
Which you hate that word.
I do hate that.
What is it when you're condescending? Condescending
tone
to when Kevin Warren talks about Ryan Poles, like we heard this week, and he's like, he's young and he's learning and he's the first guy to raise his hand when he makes a mistake. Hello.
I know.
This is not Boy Scouts and this is not kindergarten. This is the NFL.
I know.
I want someone like, God, what a great football mind.
Yes.
That's what I want to hear them say.
Same.
What a great, he knows how to put together a football department. And this is where I was like, okay, you know what? There's still way too many newness. There's still too much newness in the Bears front office
that they need
to bring someone in that has done it before.
Of course. I totally agree with you. What did you think of the optics? Because on Monday when Caleb and
don't even get me
oh my word, and Thomas Brown were talking to us, they were sitting at literally a picnic table, right? Like they were settled in to talk to us. Then Ryan Poles comes in, he's standing, so he's not hanging out very long anyway, which I was annoyed with when they got to last question and it was like 25 minutes. No, I'm sorry. Why are we cutting this off? Then they put George and Kevin in the midway,
which is another room. Like you go through the doorway, and it's basically the entry.
It's like an atrium.
It's an atrium, yeah.
It's like an atrium with a bunch of Bears pictures and whatever. It's an atrium and a staircase, and they put them there as like a separation, so it doesn't look like Father Warren is sitting next to son Poles, and that's
Uncle Warren.
Uncle Warren.
I call him Uncle Warren.
Uncle Warren. It doesn't. So that it doesn't look like as soon as the press conference started, I was like, oh my gosh, why is he standing?
Can I play for you what absolutely made me cringe?
Yeah.
And I know anyone listening is like, ugh, seriously, Peggy, but this is exactly one of the problems. And I am telling you, it drives me crazy. Is it okay if I play from this side, Jack? Okay.
And if Hub were here, I would invite him as the Helen Thomas of the Corps So we asked the first question. I don't know who's second in tenure, but I would suggest that instead of shouting over each other, you respect each other and take turns.
Oh, my God. With all due respect, George McCaskey, you are not at the White House.
No.
You are not at the White House. Because if you were, and the president was being surrounded by reporters like the Bears did with you and Kevin Warren, that is exactly the setup to shout and ask your questions, okay?
Yeah.
You're not in the situation room where you get to point out Helen Thomas and pick your questions like that. If you were, you should have been in that room.
Yes, and said, please raise your hand and we will call on you.
Exactly.
If that's what you wanted.
To me, that was so condescending.
Yes.
It was, it for someone who worked in journalism, seriously, George, you're going to say that to a room of respected, long-term reporters. Let's not shout and respect each other. We don't work for each other.
No. And George, let me just tell you, we don't shout over each other out of disrespect. We shout over each other because we all have 150 questions for you, and we get 1 or 2 shots.
Yes.
That's it.
Exactly.
And 15 minutes total in the
Totally.
entire press conference before they're whisked away.
Exactly. And then so before they tell us when it ends, I would just like them to sit there and say, we're going to stay here until every question is answered. You know, the last guy I remember doing that? Theo Epstein.
I mean, between...
Right? Like that's the kind of... You sit there and just answer the questions.
Between that and this, I'm wondering what kind of press briefing did they do behind the scenes to encourage Ryan Poles to do this?
Your plan for Caleb was very specific and very elaborate. Yep. His entire rookie season was subjected to disruption and stress. What?
Can you explain the disruption and stress part?
Offensive coordinator got fired. His head coach got fired. Through a lot of turmoil throughout the course of his rookie season. Yep. What went wrong with your plan?
I'm just stopping it there.
Now, my first thought, can I say my first thought?
Who said to him, challenge the reporter back?
Okay.
Challenge them back, because that's what Mike Ditka used to do to us.
Okay,
he would challenge you back so that you were prepared, right?
Okay. Can I tell you my first thought?
He was mad at Dan Weeder for writing that article.
That's the first thing I thought.
Yes!
He's mad at Dan, and this is what he's doing. Who wrote a very timely and appropriate article and asked the right question. Why does he get to keep his job? So don't suddenly be like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about, sir? Peggy, I that whole day afterwards, it just felt like, oh my gosh.
And I'm really glad that they were prepared for this. I'm sure they talked about this in their press briefing.
Are you committed to him for the long term? Because that seems like that would be a potential concern for a new coach coming in. If Ryan is at the end of his contract and this new coach would be starting his contract.
I mean, there are a lot of assumptions in your question. When we say long term, I mean, a year is a lifetime.
What? Come again? A year is a lifetime.
So you have your owner, your team president, and your general manager trying to puff their chest a little bit in this, and it came off really awful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, come on, you guys. Stop acting like you're so small town.
Stop acting.
Yes.
Just be genuine and transparent about this. I want someone to stand up there and say, 4 and 5, whatever they finish, 5 and 12. This is unacceptable. We will not continue this way. Like, someone put their foot down and say, done. We're done. We're done. This is not who we're going to be. We are going to change course. It's going to be different. We demand that it be different. Don't look at me and say a year is a lifetime. When that's I don't have any response to that.
I'll give it. Kevin Warren, I thought he did the best. I thought his press conference was fine outside of that answer because he knew what he was saying there. He knew exactly what he was saying there. Okay, but this is how you prep your... It was obvious that there was a pre-meeting.
Who preps them?
Ted Cruz. I'm quite sure it would be Ted Cruz, who came from Kansas City, who works directly with Kevin Warren. It's not Aaron Clark. He's not prepping them for this.
No.
And says, well, ask back, because that is a Mike Ditka way of doing a press conference. Like you ask. I remember the first time I came here when I was working with ESPN in Bristol, Connecticut, and I was warned ahead of time by Fred Mitchell. He said, just be prepared. He'll ask you a question right back if he doesn't like your question. So I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that's what he did. So like, that's okay, because that's genuine. That's this, like you said, felt like they were given a quick prep. Like, here's how you're going to handle these press conferences today, okay? Kevin, don't do a long opening, because that got a lot of criticism last time.
Right, exactly.
So just do a quick, which he did. Ryan, if you don't like a question, challenge the reporter back. It was so out of character for Ryan Poles to do that.
So out of character. So out of character. That's what I'm saying. Just be yourself. The reason I like Ryan Poles, the reason he is likable, is because what he came in with was that way, authentic and genuine, and now it doesn't feel that way.
No, this is. But I will. When Waddle and Sylvie asked for who I thought they would hire, and I said Brian Flores, I said, here's my reasoning why. When Kevin Warren says, what I learned in Minnesota was to go in with an open mind and do not have your mind made up when you go into the interview process for a coach, then that means don't go in knowing Ben Johnson is the answer and then just hiring him because that's what everyone expects you to do. Have an open mind to something that would be really different. And that's what Ryan Poles basically said was, hey, we might do something that's really different here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I said, well, you know what would be really different? Hiring the guy that is suing you.
Yes, no kidding.
Hiring the guy that is suing the NFL owners for racial discrimination. That would be really different. But the reasoning behind it is not just because Brian Flores is an excellent coach. Brian Flores would absolutely motivate this team. He would keep this locker room in order. But there is a definite sense of pride when you have most of these guys, I'm going to correct myself, most of these guys are absolutely qualified. Most of them are qualified for this job. So you have an owner and you have a team president who both have been awarded a lot of accolades for their role in DEI as well.
Yes.
And so you cannot overlook that.
No.
You cannot overlook that at all. So that's what I said. When you add it all together, that to me is like, I would not be surprised if that's what they did.
That would still surprise me.
It's their way of getting to it is what drives me crazy.
Yeah, well, correct. And it would still surprise me if they went Brian Flores. I would like them to. I think that's more likely than some of the other candidates. I think ahead of him though would be an Anthony Weaver, not Mike Kafka. Like, what are we doing? Drew Petzing, what are we doing? Like, that just no. Those guys aren't ready yet.